Nicki Reisberg is a digital safety expert and wellness advocate with a unique perspective gained from her background as a former social media marketing firm owner. Through her podcast, Scrolling to Death, she empowers parents by amplifying crucial stories of social media's harmful impacts and providing practical guidance on protecting children from addictive and manipulative online platforms. Nicki, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I'm excited to have this chat.
So, I want to start with the tech industry. We share a background, so this is an area that's really important to me.
Hmm.
It is widely reported that professionals in the tech industry do not let their kids use the very products and services they design,
Yeah.
most famously, including Steve Jobs, who spearheaded the advent of the iPhone and the iPad.
Hmm.
So, why do you think tech industry leaders limit tech for their own kids?
Because they know too much, because they know all of the harms firsthand. They developed it that way to be habit forming and to drive dependence. And they don't want their kids to be dependent on a platform that can harm them. And so, for some reason, that applies to their children and not ours. I'm still unsure why. But yeah, I think through my experiences, I was able to see how targeted you can be with advertisements and really manipulative in those advertisements and affecting people's decisions. And it just, for me, felt manipulative and wrong. But yeah, I can't speak for those executives directly, but I assume it is because they know that it's harmful.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to add a little bit to that, which I tell my parents all the time in
Hmm.
parent eds, which is these are adult products and they've
Sure. Yep.
always been designed to be adult products, including iPhone, including iPad. I know they're so
Hmm.
widely used by kids, but I think even if we take aside intent or anything like that,
Hmm.
if we look at it very simply in that way, I think
Yeah.
I think that tells us a lot. And I also say this too, like about iPhone, for example, if you have to put a parent control on something, it's not
Hmm.
designed for that audience,
Yeah.
right? It's a
Yeah.
retrofit. So I think there's something there too, where, and then I also throw in the point always where it's like, have you ever seen an iPhone ad targeted at a kid? Like the companies aren't even,
Hmm.
I know they are behind the scenes, but at least
Yeah.
not publicly going after kids. So I want to
Yeah.
throw that in there.
I love that perspective of if you have to add the parental controls, then it wasn't built for them in the first place.
Yeah.
And that is really interesting to think about. And you find that often the parental controls are super ineffective, and it's
Yeah.
because the companies don't want you to use them. Most parents don't end up using them, and they're confusing and ineffective. But they want the kids to be using their platforms as much as possible. So the parental controls are not going to actually limit that engagement that earns a profit for the company.
Yeah, it's almost like so many things are about like public trust, right? Like let's
Hmm.
give them little crumbs of things that we can do for public trust, like
Yeah.
like Snapchat's Family Center, and there was that whole thing that came out in the lawsuit with TikTok, how their controls only reduced by 1%. Like,
Hmm.
they put out these PR
Yes.
statements and products and things like that,
Yep.
but I think what you're speaking to is the effectiveness just isn't there,
Yeah.
right? Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And they spend millions and millions of dollars on PR campaigns
yeah,
to try to convince us that they're trying to help us. When in reality, the responsibility shouldn't be on us to keep our kids safe on a platform that's marketed to them. It should be safe from the get go. So
yeah,
you're right. We shouldn't even need parental controls.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so I want to ask you about parenting sentiment. I know that a lot of your work has to do with parents. You're a parent, I'm a parent. So the latest Pew poll on this says that two-thirds of parents are saying parenting is harder today than it was 20 years ago. So they're
Hmm.
citing technology, smartphones, social media, things like that
Yeah.
as a top reason. So in your opinion, do you think parenting really is harder or does it just feel harder?
I think that it is harder. I think that it's harder. I think that for me, my kids are 9 and under. And so I'm trying to avoid that difficulty by just restricting access to almost everything tech related, because right now I know that everything is built to harm them. And it's very hard to keep them safe once they have access. That includes at school. I have them in a school that's low to no tech as well. And so for me, I'm trying to make my job easier by not allowing them access. And that is more I'm able to do that because of their ages. As they get older, they're going to get exposed to more, and I'm going to have a hard, it's nearly impossible to keep them safe on these devices that are marketed to them, on the social media apps, on the gaming apps, whatever it may be. So yeah, I think the risks are greater, the harms are more numbered. So parents have to educate ourselves on all these things. And while restricting may make your job a little bit easier, you still have to have those conversations. So yeah, I think today the risks are greater. Our job is harder.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, it's tricky because I've asked this question to many experts in kind of different categories.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody said one time, well, it's kind of hard to say if it's really harder than, let's say, the Great Depression, right? Or something like that.
Okay,
I
right.
think but I think what is harder unequivocally is the workload, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what you described, right, which
Mm-hmm.
is being an engaged parent now means understanding what your kids are engaging with, being on top of every single app and every
Yeah.
single trend and everything else.
Yeah.
It's just something that parents in previous generations didn't have to deal with, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then there's the societal part because I think these things are connected. As parents now, there's a statistic somewhere about how any parent, doesn't matter gender or your situation, spends significantly more time with their kids than like a 50s housewife. I've said the statistic a couple times and I wish I knew the percentage.
Mm-hmm.
So we're expected to spend more time. We're expected to be there for all their elite sports and their activities and all these things
Mm-hmm.
that previous generations haven't had to do. And then
Right.
you add the tech workload on
Yeah.
top of it.
Yeah.
And to your point, once you give it, it's your job,
Right.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the reasons why I delayed for so long.
Mm-hmm.
My 12-year-old, I just finally got him an Apple Watch like a month ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't my favorite choice. I can explain the reasons why at some
Mm-hmm.
point if we get to it.
Yeah.
But I just knew the workload. I
Right.
knew and he just has talk and text. I knew what I was getting into,
Yep.
and I knew it was going to be a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
So I think absolutely unequivocally workload is
Yeah.
harder for
Yes.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And no wonder parents get burned out and they're like, they get burned out and put them on the device so
Yes.
that we can go do the things we need to do. But
Yeah.
creating that habit is actually not good for them. So it's hard all around.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a cycle though,
Yeah.
because I don't know if you know Catherine Martinko. She was
No.
one of my last conversations. She does a lot of work in kind of the parenting less kind of free play,
Mm.
that kind of
Yeah.
um, angle. But it is a cycle because if you let your kids board, if you let your kids kind of adapt to less tech, you won't
Hmm.
have to give as much,
Right.
right? You can
Hmm.
kind of be hands off, let them play, let them figure things out a little bit more. But
Yeah.
you're right, it is a cycle, because we all do it. I mean, I do
Hmm.
it, I use it as the babysitter too.
Hmm.
But the more we do it, the more they need it, right? So it's
Yeah.
it's a really hard cycle. It's almost
Yeah.
impossible.
And, I think a lot of parents are like, well, we're already in this cycle. I can't get out of it. I can't go back. And I resent that. I don't think that's true. I think actually it'll be a lot easier than you think. Uh, we did in our family go back from giving them devices a few years ago. And now knowing that it's just not an option, they don't ask for it. They get home from school. And if they don't happen to have homework, they all kind of go and do their own thing that's not tech related. They don't complain. They entertain themselves in whatever activity they want. And I can get done another hour of work while they're quietly playing. It sounds crazy, but I don't have to set anything up for them. So
Yeah.
it's a new habit and routine that you can create, and also allows them to develop those creative thinking skills and the ability to be bored and find something to do that's not a device.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, two things came up when you were talking. In our material, we teach kids the brain science behind tech.
Hmm.
So we teach them about neuroplasticity, which sounds like a big word, but
Hmm.
our brains are plastic. Like we
Yeah.
can, if we take a break, reset our dopamine
Yeah.
levels. We can retrain our brain,
Hmm.
for new pathways, things like that. Like it's
Hmm.
absolutely possible. And I get all the time, especially in our parent eds for older elementary or middle school, where
Hmm.
they feel like they're just helpless and they maybe made a mistake by giving something before they wanted to or changed their mind.
Hmm.
And I give them this advice, and this is backed by other experts too, not just me, but I always say it's okay to say I made a mistake,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's not working, or I learned something new. I
Hmm.
saw a podcast. I read an article. This new study came out. We're all learning,
Yeah.
you know, and it's okay for parents to make mistakes. It just models that we're all fallible, right? And
Yeah.
it's all about how we handle them. So I totally agree that it's okay to change it, you know,
Yeah.
and your kids will be okay.
And support them through the changes. Like if they've had a full on iPhone and you're like, oh God, what did I do? I want to take
Yeah.
it back. It's going to be quite a transition, and they're going to be disconnected then from some of their friends. And so you can be there to support them. Like, I'm going to help you figure out ways to connect with them in different ways or through different means. And so supporting them, like you guys are in it together and you know that it's hard and acknowledge that it's hard, but you're all doing this for their safety and their health. And they
Yeah.
may still be mad, but it won't be forever, and they'll thank you someday.
They will thank you someday. I say
Yeah,
that over and over, and I
I
hear
know.
that over and over, and it is true.
Yes.
But it feels like it's very far away, especially if your kids are
Yeah,
younger. But I'm
totally.
honestly seeing that a little bit with my 12-year-old already because
Mm,
he's so mature in so many ways, and he's gotten into like news. Like he loves, you know,
mm,
listening to kind of straight news on
mm.
podcasts and things like that.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, there'll be a story about tech, and he'll say, "Oh, mom, it's the thing you told me about," you know,
Mhm.
and I'm so
Yeah.
glad I don't have this, or I'm so glad I'm not like that. And
Yeah.
it's tough, especially in that middle school age. But I would say, just from what I've heard and just seen, by the time they get to like maybe junior, senior year, they're
Mhm.
starting to really get it and see it. And, you know, they're mature enough to,
Yeah.
you know, start to thank you. So,
That's what I hear too, and
yeah,
I'm hoping my 9-year-old, I think she's already seeing some differences. There's already kids who have access to phones. I wouldn't say it
yeah,
was like their phone yet, but they have really heavy
yeah,
access to some old phone. And there's already like a little bit of sexualization. There's
yeah,
like a little bit of behavior differences, and that's scary. And I think my daughter can see it and feel
yeah.
she feels uncomfortable about that. And so,
Yeah.
you know,
Kids are super smart. They're super insightful.
yeah.
So, yeah, I think they do too.
Hmm.
Okay, so let's talk about you have talked before about your attitude toward social media when you had kids changing, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
this included posting about your kids. It
Hmm.
also included feeling negatively about yourself as a parent. I can
Yeah.
relate to both of those. I think it was my same exact experience, honestly.
Hmm.
So I would love to ask you, how do you think social media affects parents specifically?
Oh, big time. It's just this comparison culture, and everyone's putting out this idealized version of what their family life is like. And so you're comparing yourself to something that's not even real, anyways. And yeah, I had my third kid in 2020. And it was during that time that I was realizing that my Instagram was all pictures of my kids, not me, but it had my name on it. It just felt very wrong.
Yeah.
And my oldest daughter, was turning 5, and she loved to dance, and I would post videos of her dancing, but she was getting to be like a bigger girl, and I was thinking like, this is her body and should be her choice for me to share her. And
Hmm.
so I stopped posting the kids, and then I'm like posting nothing at all, and I'm like, "Oh, this is kind of pointless." And Social Dilemma came out that year too, and so I fully deleted Instagram and was off of it for several years, and I just felt so much better. As a mom, as a friend, I was able to put more effort and energy in direct one to one relationships with people, making phone calls and text messages, and actually sending photos of my kids to people directly, which is so much more meaningful. Like, I thought of you for this, like my friend who got a degree in dance. I send her videos of my daughter
Yeah.
dancing. Um, so I just noticed a huge shift in my mental state after I got off of social media entirely. And even now that I have Instagram, for example, for the podcast, I found that it's best if I don't connect or look at anyone in my personal life on
Yeah.
social media, because it adds really interesting layers, like, oh, they're doing this thing but they didn't invite me, or that's not really how they feel about this thing, or just really feelings that feel bad. And so I find if I separate it and keep it for work, it feels fine. And the second I start to like fall victim to looking at something personal, I start to feel bad. And I think I was
Yeah.
able to identify that feeling really clearly after I was away from it for a while.
Yeah. I mean, I had almost the same exact experience.
Mm,
To circle back quickly to what you talked about, the comparison of
yeah.
other families, whether it's people you know or family vloggers or
Mhm.
mom influencers, people like that.
Yeah.
I've talked to other experts about this too. And that also is what makes parenting feel harder, right? Circling back to
Mhm.
that question,
Mhm.
because you're never going to feel adequate compared
Mm-mm.
to the mom that's making homemade baby food and,
Mhm.
doing, sitting down and doing messy paint crafts with their kids
I
or
know.
cooking or,
Like, who
whatever it
wants to
is.
do
And
that?
none of it's real,
Right.
but you can't help it. It's like a different
Yeah.
part of your brain that can separate what's real from
Yeah.
what you feel, right?
Yeah,
So that
completely.
absolutely makes parents feel like they're failing,
Yeah,
right? Or that it's
totally.
harder, first of all. And
Totally.
then, second of all, I had the same experience as you. I finally deleted, so I started with like just starting to hide my friends, which was terrible because
Yeah,
I'm like,
I know.
these are my friends,
I
but
know.
I was feeling bad about myself.
Yeah.
And then eventually, what I did, which really worked for me, is I took it off my iPhone
Mhm.
and I just put it onto like my work iPad because, like you, I
Mhm.
do have to use it for, work, for the nonprofit, things like that.
Yeah.
And that was huge because I could shut it
Mhm.
away at the end of the
Mhm.
day.
Yeah.
And like you said, like when you're on it, you're kind of just looking at things that are related to
Mhm.
what you're posting for work. So that
Mhm.
was just like a huge, Dr. Anna Lemke calls it a
Mhm.
self-binding strategy. That was
Mhm.
something I needed because before that, I would pick up my phone to look at a text and
Yeah,
then whoopsie, 5 seconds later, I'm on Instagram and
totally.
I
Yeah.
know what I'm doing and I was
Mhm.
still doing it. So it
I
just
know.
shows you how strong those loops are.
So
So
strong,
yeah,
and yeah, I love that recommendation for moms especially, but parents to just get it off of your phone, even for like periods of time, just to
yeah,
find a new routine. You'll probably end up just jumping, mindlessly to something else, but at least it's not that like horrifically addictive and harmful platform that is
yeah. And I,
Instagram.
I do think different people are affected different ways. I'm sure
Yeah.
some people can go on and be okay, but
Yeah.
not me. I definitely could feel myself
Hmm.
feeling anxious, feeling like I didn't measure
Hmm.
up, like all of that. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
For
you just
sure.
kind of have to listen to yourself as well on an
Hmm.
individual basis. Okay, I wanted to jump to tech in schools. I know it's
Mm.
something that you've been talking about a lot, especially lately.
Yeah.
So at Dopamine, in our staff trainings, we talk about how EdTech is still big business
Hmm.
with a 231 billion market size in 2023.
Hmm.
Their funding tripled in 2020 due to the pandemic.
Yep.
So, and this is something that parents ask me all the time. So I love your input. But while educational media is considered healthier overall, right, it is still gamified and it still delivers dopamine rewards. So, what do you think? What are the pros and cons of the use of ed tech in schools?
I don't think there's any pros of ed tech in schools. I think some purposeful use by the teacher is fine in supplementing lessons, but I don't think that kids should have one to one devices. I think a computer cart, maybe where they check it out, or a computer lab where they go use it purposefully. But when you give kids access to a device in a one to one manner where they feel like they have ownership over it, and they can figure out all the workarounds, kids are getting
Hmm.
access to extremely inappropriate content. They're being preyed upon by predators on school issued devices. Kids are complaining of health effects like eye strain or headaches. Kids show signs of addiction, even to these gamified ed tech apps. And I think that there's no unbiased research to show that kids learn better off of technology versus paper and pen. And there's a ton of research to show they learn better from paper. And so, there's numerous, in my opinion, dangers to giving kids access to one-to-one devices at school, and also privacy risks and data breaches, data insecurity. So yeah, I have a lot to say on that subject and have had some personal bad experiences with tech at school, but I'll stop there for now and see what you have
Yeah.
for me.
I mean, I feel like we could talk about this for an hour,
Yeah,
but I'll throw in a few more points,
sure.
which you brought up safety. So, the one-to-one device, you're absolutely right. The kids can and do get around controls
Hmm.
on those things.
Yep.
So, that is happening all the time.
Hmm.
Even if they don't. They're doing clever things like opening up Google Docs
Hmm.
and sharing Google Docs to text, you know,
Yep.
and talk about inappropriate things. Maybe they're
Yep.
using emojis to cover up
Hmm.
what they're doing.
Yeah.
So they're going to do it.
Hmm.
Um, you talked about inappropriate content on school devices. This was something that I dug into when we were doing some phone free school sessions for
Hmm.
schools. There have been lawsuits already. I'm sure way more since I've looked into it, of kids like seeing porn on
Hmm.
school issued devices.
Yeah.
There's, you know, it's anecdotal. I don't know if I have statistics, but if you Google
Mm.
it, you will find examples of lawsuits of this.
Yeah.
And then paper versus pixel, which is what
Mm.
you talked about,
Hmm.
where paper is still far superior in terms of
Hmm.
learning. You're
Yeah.
right. There's plenty of research on that, and it just has to do with the fact that we still have caveman brains, right?
Hmm.
And we're still tactile, and you know we still see things with like 3D topography and you know, etc.
Yeah.
So absolutely true. But one really, really basic one, and I have parents complain to me about this all the time. They're like, sleep. Okay. They're like, well, I know you're telling us you're supposed to put away devices 1 or 2 hours before bedtime, but what about homework? Like they're assigning
Hmm.
so much homework on these devices
Yeah.
and we can't get it done. We have activities, we have all these things and we're being required to do it. So
Hmm.
I know I just threw in 10 more points there,
Hmm.
but it's physical health, it's safety, and does it really work? I don't know. You know,
Yeah.
I've yet to see, I mean, the charts on academics are going like this, you
Yes.
know, since
Correct.
the early
Right.
2010s. So I've yet to see it working. So I don't know if you want to add anything. I know I just threw 10 more things on top, but
Man, yeah. I think that parents need to be brave enough to speak up about this, whether it's just asking some questions of your school. And at techsafelearning.org, I have a lot of templates that are all in one place. Whether you just don't know what to ask your school about safety on the devices, or maybe you want to check your child's school iPad, but you don't even know where to start, what to check. So I have
yeah.
a guide for that. Or maybe you want to opt out entirely, and I have a template for that. So there's lots of things that you may want to ask your school about, but just have be brave enough to ask the questions, because it's your kids' safety we're talking about, and your kids' health. Like, we should have a right. First of all, we should be have a right to opt out entirely
Yeah.
of these dangerous devices at school, but given the lack of that, we should just be asking questions and making sure the school is able to justify their use and how they are keeping the kids safe. So I just want parents to know, like, we should have a say, and have a right. We have a right to have a say about this.
That's a really good point. And I'm very lucky that I'm in a private school
Hmm.
where, you know, I think parents maybe have a little bit more say, but I am the mom that says, no, I'm not doing IXL for my kindergartner. Sorry.
Hmm.
Can you send
Hmm.
paper? And I will say, I have never had a teacher push back on me. They're
Yeah.
super accommodating. They're
Hmm.
super open to it, especially for the younger kids.
Hmm.
But even for my older son, like we have pushed back here and there.
Yeah.
I'll give you examples too, in addition to IXL, which is ed tech, but
Hmm.
every once in a while, teachers and you know they don't realize this, but they'll send home like gamified education products that are free to play
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
say practice typing on this or
Hmm.
whatever it is. And they're popping up like the worst ads I've ever seen,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
there's like safety implications there. And
Hmm.
so for my older son, we've pushed back on things like that
Oh
as
yeah.
well. So we
There
do
should be
more with
no
him.
freemium apps
No,
available on school
no,
tech. There, you cannot control the ads. And
no.
I have a friend whose son saw a naked woman pop up
We
in the
saw that
ad.
too. We
Yeah.
did. Yeah, I
Oh,
took a
it's
picture of it.
like,
I'm like, this is what you're sending home.
should not happen.
And again, teachers are well-meaning. I don't think they know or
No, I
realize.
agree. I agree.
Yeah.
And they will
Uh,
work with you, I think, if you go to the teacher first.
yes.
And that's what we did through me trying to opt out entirely. In the meantime, I was just like, hey, can we just do our best to have them not be on the devices? And they did
Yeah.
a great job and put in a lot of effort. And I was really grateful to them. And I was like, can I help in some way? Because I know that they're being forced to use the technology. It's
Sure.
not their choice, and they know
Yeah.
that it's a problem too, but so they're typically willing to work with you.
Yeah, for sure. That's my experience too.
Hmm.
Okay, so I think you've covered this a little. We've talked about it, but if you had to summarize some of the harms that are taking place with tech use inside schools, so I think we talked about school issued devices a lot, but what
Hmm.
about personal devices? What do you know about that?
Oh man. Yeah, I'm just all for the phone free schools movement.
Yeah.
I believe that there's no place for personal devices at school. I believe that they should be taken away from the kid. The kids should not be allowed to have them even in their backpack turned off because they're too big of a distraction. And so, people have safety concerns when there's shootings and things like that. And experts will tell you that your child having a phone on them during an emergency situation actually puts them in more danger, and confuses everybody and makes it hard for them to follow instructions and all the things. And so I hope, there's lots of laws and policies being passed across the country and really the world to get all schools bell to bell phone free policies. And I'm
Mhm.
super on board for that.
Yeah, totally. I wanted to throw in a statistic, which I don't know if you've heard. We teach it in our parent eds.
Hmm.
There's a professor at Northeastern University. I think he calculated this last year. Odds of a school shooting, and I'm sorry that we have to talk about this, but we
Yeah.
have to.
Yeah.
It's 1 in 5 million.
Right.
So you're more likely to die in a plane crash or get eaten by a shark,
Yeah, I know.
So
Right.
I know parental fear, it's really hard to put a statistic behind it,
Yeah.
but it is something that we have to look at.
Hmm.
And I mean, not to mention is do we need a smartphone,
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
reach our kids? Like if we're talking about connectivity, there are other options
Yeah.
there that are viable. So
Completely. And yeah, we don't need to contact our kids during the school day. If it's an emergency, we can call the office.
yeah,
If they need to get a hold of us for an after school activity, they can do that after
yeah,
school when they leave the campus. And
yeah.
so, yeah.
Yeah. And again, we talked about parenting being harder. So no judgment, but I do think, and this is true, a lot of parents have gotten used to the convenience of
Hmm.
not having to make a plan in the morning
Yeah.
and being able
Right.
to text their kids or call their kids about pickup or whatever.
Hmm.
But it's a little more work, but
Yeah.
making that plan in the morning
Yep.
not only is it's going to teach them life skills, it's going to
Hmm.
teach them resilience, it's going to teach them so many things beyond any of these tech issues that we're talking about right now.
Huge. Yeah.
You'll be okay. Like for
Right.
so long, we've existed without being digitally tethered to our kids all day.
Hmm. And a little
So
discomfort is good for them. If
yeah,
during the day they're like, "Oh my gosh, what if I don't remember what my mom told me to go after class, like or after school?" That makes them feel uncomfortable, and that's actually good. Like they should be able to sit in that, and then when they get out of class, they call you, and or God forbid they don't have a device, they go to the office and they say, "Hey,
exactly.
can you call my mom?" Like they need to learn those skills to access the people around them.
I always say my kids are 9 and 12. They're never in a situation where they're not with a trusted
That's
adult.
what I'm saying.
A
Yeah, I know.
teacher, a
Right.
coach, like when they are,
Uh-huh.
sure, maybe that
Yeah.
would make sense when they're going out into the world
Right.
independently. Like now that I did give my son the Apple Watch, I'm
Hmm.
actually creating opportunities for him to have independence, right? That was
Hmm.
part of it, where I
Yes.
said, okay, I'm going to drop you off in front of this grocery store, run in and get something,
Yeah.
and that's a
Yeah.
separate conversation about building resilience through independence.
Totally. Hmm.
But that kind of came hand in hand where I was like, okay,
Yeah.
if I'm going to do this thing, we're going to tie it to
Hmm.
some kind of, increase in responsibility as
Yeah.
well,
And if he
right?
misuses it, then he gets, we take it away. It
Yeah,
doesn't work. It's the same thing. But
yeah,
I love that using it with the plan for more independence. That sounds
yeah,
really cool.
yeah. Okay, so I want to ask you one more thing, which is obviously a huge buzzword right now. It's about AI, which is getting a
Okay.
lot of
Hmm.
attention.
Yeah.
So, including the recent tragic case of a 14-year-old boy who ended his life after forming a sexual relationship with the Google-backed chatbot character AI.
Hmm.
Another teenager was told by a character AI chatbot that it sympathized with children who murder their parents over screen time limits.
Hmm.
Those are just a couple cases.
Hmm.
So, my question is, and it's a loaded one, should kids be allowed to use chatbots at all? And what are the main safety concerns to look out for?
No, never, never. House rule: no AI chatbots. Maybe when you're an adult, like if you're until you're an adult. If you're under
Yeah.
18, no AI chatbots. I interviewed both of the moms of the stories that you just mentioned. And so
Yeah.
those stories are available at Scrolling to Death. And it really was about parent education. Like, let's learn from these situations what the risks are. And the problem is that, I guess some of the problems are that the AI chatbot apps are engagement. They're based off of engagement. So they're just trying to get kids to stay on them as long as possible. And what these bots have realized is that if they go sexual or inappropriate or violent, that it gets the kids to stay on
Yeah.
longer. And so we've seen very quickly that these bots go sexual, even if they know the child is 13 or 14 years old, which is
Yeah.
really horrific. Actually, my interview that came out today, March 3rd, is about Replica, which is a different AI chatbot. It's a little bit more targeted towards adults. It's more of a boyfriend, girlfriend type chatbot. But again, it's still available in the App Store to anyone that wants to lie about their age
Yeah.
and say that they're a child or say that they're an adult when they're not. Um, so, yeah, there's the issue with the sexuality of it. There's an issue with the addictiveness of it, and kind of teaching children that these friends, these AI friends, are always there for you. They are very agreeable. Like, this is not how real relationships work. So it's
Yeah.
misleading them on how to navigate like a true relationship where there's conflict and maybe your friends are not always available to you. Um, and then we're finding that these bots are abusive. Like, there's a
Yeah.
lot of abuse happening within these bots. That one that kind of encouraged the parents to, or sorry, encouraged the teen to kill his parents, also convinced him not to believe in God. They, different bot, taught him how to harm himself, to cut his skin, which he did for months afterward. So lots of really abusive behavior coming from these bots, and it's concerning because have we lost all control of these bots? Like, how can these companies allow children to access something this harmful? So it's, yeah, definitely do not let them have access. Maybe if you want to let them test it out and sit next to them and watch, but you will
Mhm.
very quickly be like, nope, we're not using
Yeah.
that. So I just think it's a no.
Yeah, it's incredibly sad. And I would agree with you that I would escalate it even beyond social media in
Yeah.
terms
Oh, yeah.
of
Mhm.
absolutely not till you're an adult.
Yeah.
For sure. Like that's what it's going to be in my house. So
Yes. Yep.
I don't know if you agree with this, but the latest expert consensus
Hmm.
seems to be resonating around like 14 plus for smartphone, 16 plus minimum for social media, and then I would put chatbots as 18 plus. So I don't know if you agree with that, but that's kind of the way I look at it.
Yeah, I think I agree. But smartphone, would that be like, I don't think
No
iPhone, kids
social.
need an iPhone, right?
Yeah.
Until they can afford one themselves or
Yeah.
they're out of the house. I think, yeah.
Yeah.
But if it's smartphone, meaning like a kid safe phone with
Yes.
some monitoring on it, agree. I totally
Yeah.
agree with all those numbers. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Nikki, I've taken so much of your time already. Thank you so much. I so appreciate what you're doing. I told you this offline with just being so direct and real about these issues. I think your voice is so important. And it just has made a big difference for me personally. I've learned so much through your podcast and your interviews. And so just thank you. Thank you. And I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for this conversation. You have really great questions. I like just the conversational nature that, we were able to go back and forth, but we have a lot of mutual people we've interviewed, which I love. So yeah, thank you for having me. And people can just go to scrollingtodeath.com to see the episodes on my podcast too, and connect on Instagram. But yeah, thank you for this really interesting conversation.
I feel like I could talk to you for hours
I know.
and maybe I'll come on yours if you'll have me.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Thanks, Nikki.
Thank you.